Good evening. A hospital which serves hundreds of thousands of people in the West will shut its accident and emergency department overnight from 10 o'clock this evening.
The closure at Weston General Hospital was ordered after inspectors said there weren't enough staff at night to make sure patients were safe. Well, our Somerset correspondent Clinton Rogers is outside Weston A&E for us now. Clinton, good evening.
Good evening, David. Thank you. Well, accident and emergency here is open right now, but as you say, from 10 o'clock this evening, 24-hour cover here stops. Now, managers at this hospital insist that robust plans are in place to treat patients elsewhere, and they point out that this is a national, not a local problem, a shortage of doctors. In fact, they say that Weston is the fourth hospital in England to close its casualty unit at night. Now, if you look at the data from Weston, you'll see that 1 in 5 patients here actually use A&E during the night hours. But what will happen now if you ring 999 in Weston? Well, you will be taken either to Bristol, 24 miles away, or Taunton, which is 27 miles away. Not a popular decision, as we saw earlier today when there was a large and rather noisy protest.
A&E! A&E! A&E!
They came to make their voices heard. Their anger and their fears were obvious.
Who's NHS? Who's NHS?
I'm more than worried. I've been talking to the people on the streets and they are worried. They're worried about dying before they get to the hospital.
But the reality is this protest won't change the decision. From tonight, Weston's Accident and Emergency Department will close from 10 p.m. until 8 a.m. each day. The hospital say it's because of a shortage of doctors, a shortage which last month led the Care Quality Commission to condemn A&E services here as inadequate. So from today, nighttime emergency cases will need to be taken by ambulance either to Bristol or Taunton.
There's an awful lot of research which has shown, from academic journals in 2007 onwards, that if you move a patient in a trauma situation, for every 10 kilometres you move them, there's an extra 1% risk of mortality. In other words, you move people who are seriously, dangerously ill, they can die.
The hospital says that's an unfair criticism, since serious trauma cases are already routinely taken either to Bristol or Taunton. Protesters packed a meeting at the Weston Hospital Trust this morning to hear managers insist the closure is temporary, though no one could tell us when that might change.
At this stage, I can't say when we're going to reopen. I'd love to be able to stand here and say that. I don't have that information at the moment. We're going to have to rebuild. There may be some retraining we need to do, and there are recruitments.
But are you aiming to have it open again?
We're absolutely aiming to have it open again.
We haven't seen a clear plan for how they're going to restore doctor services here, so people are right to be worried. That's why there are so many people here today protesting and going into the board meeting.
So from tonight, if you turn up at Weston's A&E, you'll find it closed. An outside phone, your only access to emergency care. Clinton Rogers, BBC Points West, Weston-super-Mare.
Well, earlier I spoke to the MP for Weston, John Penrose, and I asked him why the issue had been allowed to get to such a crisis point when the hospital admitted that the A&E department had been fragile for years and the signs had been there.
The signs have been there, and to be fair to successive generations of health managers, not just in Weston but all the way up through to NHS bosses here in London as well, they have been trying. So there was, for example, about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago now, an attempt to twin the hospital with Taunton, because the idea being that if you get closer links with one of the bigger hospitals in the area, then you can do joint hiring, you can attract the kind of staff that Weston can't attract on its own, you can solve the hiring problem that we've just been discussing. That deal fell through. I think now that there is real pressure, I'm certainly strongly trying to get people to focus on this, to do an equivalent kind of deal with one of the Bristol trusts, with one of the Bristol hospitals. But probably part of the answer is to get a deal, get a link, get a much stronger partnership working, perhaps even a merger with one of those Bristol trusts, so that we can do that joint hiring, which will solve the problem once and for all for the long term.
So how quickly do you think that could happen?
It can't happen fast enough for me. So I've spoken to not just the bosses at Weston Hospital, but also the bosses of Bristol hospitals, plus health ministers here in Westminster as well, to say we've been talking about this for ages. For one reason or another, it hasn't happened. We have got to move now. It's got to the point where it can't stay open in the middle of the night. Everybody wants a permanent answer to this, so let's really press the button, let's get it done.
And what's your instinct for those people who are watching that will be affected by this in terms of reopening? Are you thinking weeks or months or possibly even longer?
Well, what I've asked and what I've been demanding to anybody who will listen, both here in Westminster with health ministers, but also NHS managers anywhere that I can get hold of them, is that we need the plan to get the thing reopened, and we need the plan quickly, because at the moment we've got a plan to make sure that it's safe tomorrow and that people who get ill in the middle of the night get proper treatment and get it promptly. But we need the plan to get it reopened soon, and I've been promised that that will be available in the next couple of weeks. Once that plan is in place and everyone's agreed it, then we've actually got to execute it, and at that point the project manager and me and probably many of your listeners will want to see Gantt charts and all sorts of deadlines and all those sorts of things that will be needed to make sure that whatever the plan is gets delivered on time to budget, and that we are doing it as fast as we decently and safely can.
OK, so it seems it's fairly unclear, but we watch this space.
Yeah.
John Penrose, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.